All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome again. We are here this rainy, is it rainy where you are? Wednesday morning to discuss the 2025 renewal evaluations. I'm joined today by my colleagues Liz Isaac, Miles Wensek, and Lauren Peretti is here as well. And by Adam Yarnett from Nutmeg, who has helped us with the renewal evaluation database and is going to demonstrate that for us in a little bit. You were all muted as you came in, but we encourage participation. If you have questions, please raise your hand or unmute yourself to ask a question. If for some reason we run out of time, we'll ask you to hold your questions to the end, but I doubt that will happen. What else do I need to say? Oh, I did want to ask before we launch into the slides, how many people, by either show of hands or throwing something in the chat, are completely new to this renewal evaluation process? I saw one hand go up. If
Yep.
you could do the hand on on the bottom of your screen, the reaction, and raise your hand, that would help us see it better. Can't always see, everyone's cameras aren't on. Awesome. So four new, and nobody's saying in the chat that they're new. So there are 60 people here, and a handful of you are new. Thank you for letting us know that. So for those of you who've been here before, it's largely the same, but happy to give everybody a refresher. And if those of you haven't been here before and we're going too fast or something's unclear to you that we're saying, please raise your hand or throw a question in the chat. Next slide.
Did it not?
It didn't.
Sorry.
Oh,
I'm
that's okay.
having a little tiny bit of technical difficulty. Let me just try again. Sorry about that. One sec.
No problem. If
Oh,
you're
yeah.
new, extra welcome to you
There we go.
also.
Thank you.
Okay, here's our agenda for today. Welcome and introductions. We just did that. We're going to walk through the background of renewal evaluations, how it's developed, why we do it. We're going to give an overview of the renewal evaluation database, RED, we call it as an acronym. Walk through the criteria for this year's renewal evaluation, talk about the schedule and the steps that providers you all have to take in order to complete the process. And Adam, as I said, is going to go through a demonstration of the renewal evaluation database. Then there are questions and some resources on the final slides. I mean, time for questions and resources. Background. Okay, so key facts. There are over 110 projects funded by CT BOS, and actually, that number is quite a bit larger when we talk about all of the sub projects within those projects, which is how largely programs are evaluated by sub projects, service providers, that type of thing. The renewal evaluations use data from HMIS or from DV providers from the comparable database. HMIS is the Homeless Management Information System, which providers are already required to enter data into. That data is collected for the purpose of annual performance reports and system performance measures, which so annual performance reports are for projects individually. System performance measures look at all the projects within the system and tell us how we're doing over a year period of time. HUD also requires COCs to evaluate projects and scores whether the COCs evaluate certain things, whether it's a fair process, an equitable process, whether we use objective criteria, that type of thing. Next slide. Why do we evaluate renewal projects? So in addition to what I just said, that uh, about APRs and system performance measures. Performance data is used by HUD to evaluate system performance. So that how we do as a COC and the perform some of the performance measures are length of stay in a project, whether people gain income when they're in a project. Sometimes we look at the time between when a person enters a program, project entry, and the move-in date, exit locations, all have to do and go into our system performance. So HUD looks at that closely, and our COC score is impacted by how we do as a system. Performance data is also used by CT BOS, by our continuum of care, to rank projects in the annual COC competition. It's required by HUD that we rank each project in the annual competition. And again, HUD asks detailed questions about how we do that, and they're looking at whether we evaluate certain things and if the project is objective and equitable. CTBOS also uses performance data to inform which projects continue to be funded. We also use it for continuous quality improvement. We as a COC, and hopefully you all as programs, can use it as an opportunity to look at your own outcomes and tweak anything you might need to tweak in your programs in order to get better outcomes. It provides the steering committee with information about system-wide needs. We might use this information to come up with additional resources for providers to, for instance, if we, excuse me, see that people aren't gaining income, excuse me, we might look at what resources are available to help people with employment or gaining benefits, Social Security, that type of thing. When we do better as a continuum of care on system performance, that translates into fully funded renewals for our annual COC competition, or what we sometimes call the NOFO. And that also translates, if there is funding available, for more funds for new projects for our whole area. Was there questions? No. Okay.
No, just so folks know, Lauren put the slides in the chat, so you guys can have it right there. And then also the link to the CT Boss website. We have a whole page on all things renewal evaluation.
Thank you. Renewal Evaluation Database, or RED. So for the fourth year in a row now, we are using this new database, new to us a little bit. And it's been super helpful, we think. Hopefully you all think so as well. It helps providers to see exactly what your score will be. It helps us be hopefully more transparent with the whole process. So you can see how the data in your HMIS or your comparable data system is translating to what your score is. It takes data from HMIS, SurveyMonkey, Zengen, and for DV providers, the comparable database. Providers have direct access to their scored HMIS data in real time, and we'll walk through how that works in a little bit. After the launch of RED, providers can regularly check their renewal evaluation score and can see how that score changes in response to data updates in HMIS. I think that's it. HMIS and comparable database. So the majority of items scored are from HMIS and comparable database data. The reporting period is the same period as system performance measures period. So October 1st, 2023 to September 30th, 2024 for most measures. RED pulls HMIS data to produce the renewal evaluation reports. HMIS and those few other, like for SurveyMonkey for the surveys. And actually we put the spending in Zengen, and contacts are from Zengen. So those are from those points. Providers can look at, again, these reports in RED. If the data is incorrect, if it's showing you something like we have 12 people in our program, we don't have 10 that this is showing, then providers need to go back into HMIS or the comparable database, update the information there, and then refresh it in RED in order for that data to show. Next slide. The 2025 evaluation criteria and instructions are posted to the CT BOS website. There's a renewal evaluation page there where you can find everything to do with RED for this year. And I think we're probably going to pop them in the chat. Next slide.
Okay, and also I'm just going to do a plug for the instructions because it gives you all the detail for the renewal evaluation process, and that's sort of that document is your friend for renewal evaluation season. So we encourage you to take a look at that.
Instructions including the schedule, Liz?
Yes.
Yes.
The instructions have everything, and we keep updating it when we get new deadlines. So if folks can just make sure you take a look at that, it has everything you want to know and didn't want to know about renewal evaluation.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh,
So
and
as we said,
just
go
a
ahead.
quick note in that last slide, the 2025 criteria and the instructions, they're actually linked to those criteria instructions. So if you were in a slide, you can just click on that and it'll open up the document for you.
Thanks, Miles.
Okay, the criteria are linked on this slide as well. We just want to flag all of these for you. It's a good resource to tell you every item that your project may or may not be evaluated on. And you can see within this document, adult PSH, adult in the headings, it'll tell you yes, if there's a field indicating yes next to the performance measure on the left, then your program is being evaluated on that item. And then it also provides the benchmark or standard that your project or the particular project types are being held to, evaluated on. We're using the renewal evaluation database to submit score change requests and corrective action plans, which is the same as what we did last year. New and notable. Oh my God. So instead of quarterly, we're now requiring projects to review and update your contacts in Zengen twice a year. And there's a link to Zengen here where you can look at your profile. So we have a primary contact, secondary, and third. Look at those. And then there are extra fields if you want other people within your organization to have access to the RED database. There's fields in your profile to enter that information as well. There's also a newer field towards the bottom of the contact form to enter the date that the information was last reviewed and or update. So it could be the case that nothing has changed. There are no new employees, there are no new people you want in the database, but we still want you to go. We want to know that you all have your eyes on that and are updating it. Contacts are so important to us. We want to make sure the information, because this also is attached to our email distribution list. So we want to make sure the right people are getting this important information that we have. So there's a field to enter now the date that you've most recently looked into Zengen. Next slide. The data sources for each of the criteria that projects are being evaluated on is on the criteria document as well. So you can see on the slide here, for spending, we get the data from HUD Sage and we actually put it into Zengen or ELOX. For occupancy, everywhere it says APR here, that the information is being pulled from either HMIS or from your comparable database. Next slide. There's a new field form within RED, and it's on the HMIS program details tab, which shows HMIS data related to returns to homelessness by race. This is only for non-DV projects, and it comes from HMIS. So we ask you to take a look at that. One of the things we're focusing on is trying to ensure that our program outcomes are equitable, and if not, take steps to make them equitable.
We've got a hand up. Deanna, do you want to unmute yourself?
Hi, thank you,
Hey,
Liz.
of
I
course.
just wanted to double check. We had that work group regarding looking at system performance measures. I guess we are not changing or making those updates for the 2025 renewal.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Deanna. Good question. So I know not everybody attends steering committee meetings, but we did announce this in a steering committee. What happened was when we looked at all the great changes that work group was recommending, and we looked at the timeline that we needed to get all of those changes done, tested, working properly, et cetera. And we realized that we were going to have 2 NOFO competitions. So in this last year, had dropped 2 NOFOs concurrently. We knew it just was not feasible for our team to be able to move all of those things forward in this cycle. So now that the NOFOs are over and we have launched 2025, our 2025 renewal evaluation process, we are going to be looping back next week to those changes and working with Nutmeg to see what's going to be feasible to implement. It may be because there were so many great ideas that people had through that work group. It may be, we're going to move forward as much as we can, as quickly as we can, and we'll try to move forward the things that you guys identified as the most important first. It may be that the rollout of those things has to happen not in 1 year all at once, but to be continued. We will keep everyone in the loop through the steering committee meetings what the 2026 criteria are, but at least some, if not all of those criteria changes, we should be able to get in place for 2026.
Thank you.
Sure. And we're sorry we couldn't move it forward more quickly, Deanna.
Okay, next slide. So we're going to walk through some of the steps in RED, and as I said again, Adam is going to walk through these in the live database in a little bit. So grant assessment review. The first thing for providers to do, and hopefully these slides can be used as a guide for you all as you go into the renewal evaluation database. We're going to walk through a few of the steps now. This screen is what you see when you first go in, and the first things providers have to do is to click on the awaiting submission. I can't read my own screen. Awaiting submission, the blue highlighted button here. Select the grant that you first want to look at, and select the awaiting submission button there. Once RED has processed an evaluation, a number score will appear instead of the awaiting submission button. Okay, next slide. So once you press that button, this is the screen that will show. The screen, you have to click the black box here, complete grant assessment review, in order to see and review your data scores. It indicates to the system to go out to the HMIS system and pull in your data to score your project. This is the next screen, and it's required for HMIS projects to fill in the 2 drop-down menus. This is for non-DV project. We're going to show the DV screen on the next slide. So non-DV projects will see the HMIS ID, project, HMIS project name and the project type listed. These are listed here in this black ribbon here. It's required that you confirm your operating year and you confirm your project listing. Next slide.
Just one note, if you do have data that say the dates are wrong because maybe the operating year has moved, that has happened, or you have a new HMIS ID, or you're removing an HMIS ID because of mergers and so on and so forth. The RED on my side, I only see is an error messages. This says X on operating or project list. I will either, if you email the information to the CT BOS website, or I will email you because I need the information because this won't tell me the information.
I also wanted to highlight on this slide that all projects being reviewed are based on the 2022 NOVO grants, and these dates can be very confusing, but the 2022 NOVO grants are the ones that started in 2023 and ended in 2024. So this screen's going to show 2022, even though we're working on the 2025 renewal evaluation year. Next slide. So this is what it looks like for DB projects. It's very similar to the last screen, except for there are the different drop-down menus, or actually there's only the operating year is same as the last screen. So you'll have to confirm that that's accurate. Though that's the drop-down down below. And there's a field to upload your HUD CSV export. So your export from your comparable database. That's to complete here for DB projects.
And if you have an issue with your APR, because the ETO system sometimes bugs out, just send me the APR and I'll look to see, because the error messages we get from RED on this is very vague, and you maybe you could figure it out pretty easily and fix it, but in most cases I might have to go through it.
I just want to say here, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but in order for us to keep track to make sure that all the support requests are logged and that we've resolved them all, please, rather than emailing Miles, use the RED support request feature, because that's how we can keep track of everything and make sure we get to all of your important questions quickly and that none fall through the cracks.
I think it was said there already, but just to reiterate that the uploading the APR is only going to be necessary for DB projects or projects that are not in HMIS. So most of you will not have to deal with that particular aspect.
Good point.
Thanks, Adam. All right, avoiding common pitfalls. We have a few slides on items that are troublesome perennially. So let's walk through those. Incomplete HMIS data is a problem and will cause a problem in your scoring, and it will cause it to look inaccurate. So for instance, people might miss, it has been a big problem in the past. I think it was improved last year, but every program participant requires an annual assessment in HMIS, right? And if that's not complete, then your data won't reflect what's really happening in your program. So incomplete annual assessments, or a lack of an exit destination, or a lack of a move-in date, things like that could cause issues in scoring your renewal evaluation. Incorrect number of program participants. So it hasn't been uncommon for people to not yet be entered in the HMIS program or exited as needed. And again, with the appropriate correct exit destination. Or another issue we come upon is people starting their data review process late. That's just, in addition to if there are bigger problems that need more time to resolve, it can cause panic, right? On your end, on our end. And so getting started early is very highly recommended. It just gives everybody more time to get the process right and in a pace that's comfortable for everyone.
So one quick thing on this, on the pitfall slide, and Adam, jump in if I'm wrong about this, but I think another thing that we see not too infrequently is duplicate assessments, right? So the same person has more than one assessment started for a particular period, and then that causes some wonkiness in the data between what you see in RED perhaps and what you see in your APR, for example. Adam, is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah.
Duplicate in assessments or duplicate enrollments or like multiple assessments on the same day, things like that that make the APR a little confused as to which one it should be looking at, have caused the bulk of the issues with discrepancies so far.
Okay.
Yeah, and the last thing is I reviewed a lot of the test reports, and I noticed there's quite a few people with programs, I should say, with incomplete annual or exit assessments. So that could, would have bad outcomes because the reporting, the APR might be reporting it like you have 80%. Because it's pulling up one way, but RED is pulling it up with saying it's incomplete, and it's going to give you like 30% or something like that. So that's because the data is not fully entered in HMIS, and then RED is pulling from HMIS directly, not the APR. So there's going to be discrepancies because of it. And
And Adam, I think will
can,
show us, Adam will show us, I think, later when he does the demo, where you can see those incomplete, where you can get more information about those incomplete assessments.
Great. I saw Tashika's hand. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Tashika, do you have a pitfall to add?
No, actually, it was covered.
Oh, Adam covered it? Okay. Very good.
Absolutely. I just remind everyone, please just make sure that when you're finding anything, wonky with your assessments, duplicate assessments, or anything like that, just submit a ticket and we'll work with you to get that stuff cleaned up. It's just a matter of deleting the assessment that was created accidentally.
Great. Thank you.
Looks like
Thanks, Tashika.
I think we were going to say the same thing, Liz. It looks like
Yes.
there's a question in the chat.
Yes.
Elaine asked, what happens if an annual was complete in February and the client was exited in June? So I think you have to do an annual in February and then another exit assessment in June, but I will defer to the experts at Nutmeg.
That's correct. If you've done that, that means you've done the work correctly, right? You didn't know the client was going to exit. The assessment was due. You completed the annual assessment because it was due. And then the client exits and you will complete the exit workflow, get your exit assessments, and the report will appropriately tag them as a leaver and pull in all their exit assessment information.
Thanks, Tashika.
No problem.
So another thing that's a common pitfall is we've identified these discrepancies in the data. We've said no, that we have the incorrect number of people, or we know people's income increased, but it's not shown. We went back and fixed the HMIS data. In order for that to show up in the renewal evaluation database and in your score, you have to click this blue field here, update score based on current HMIS data. It doesn't just automatically show in RED once you make the HMIS changes. You have to go in here and tell the database to go look for your new data, new updated data. So we want to make sure everyone knows that.
Yeah, so once you click that, it'll run for like 5 to 10 or whatever amount of seconds. And then on the screen, it'll either give you, which it should give you, is a green, like on top success, and the date effective would be the date that you just ran it, and so then it's all updated. If you get an error message, obviously, then you have to put a tick in it.
Thank you, Miles.
Thanks.
Next slide, I think.
All
with
right.
performance, I'm going to
Yes.
hand it over to you, Liz.
Yep. So we talked about why it matters to do this. Now we're going to kind of dig in and look at the specifics of what we are actually evaluating and looking at. And, Shannon talked a little bit about the beginning, why it matters. There are lots of reasons just to run great programs and just making sure that we're always aligning with HUD priorities. So I got to move you guys over. A busy screen here. Sorry, one sec. Okay, so obviously we want to make sure that we're spending all our money using our funds efficiently. And so when we look at this, all projects that are over $2 million must leave less than $75,000 unspent. If your project is between 250,000 and 2 million, you need to spend 95% and leave less than 50,000 unspent. And then smaller projects under 250,000 must spend at least 85% of their grant. And the data source for this is the SAGE spending data from the most recent APR submitted to HUD. And the evaluation period, and we're going to talk more about this when we talk about spending, is the operating year. So it is different than what we look at for some of the other performance measures. So spending, a little bit in the weeds here. So the most important thing here, several things, right? Submit your APR on time. That's just a plug for submitting your APR and on time. And we are only able to look at spending data if it exists in the system by January 29th, 2025. So there's some examples here. If your project ended at the end of October, you're going to submit it. It has to be in SAGE by the 29th of January. And we are able to look at that operating year, which started in November and ended October 31st. Pop-ups. If your project ended at the end of November, your APR isn't going to be due until the end of February, which means we can't look at those data because that is past our evaluation period for this particular metric. So we're going to need to look at the December 1st, 2022 till November 30th, 2023. We'll stop there for a second. Is this making sense to folks? So if you would like us to look at your spending data, and we're going to give an example here, and your project ended, we just talked about it, right? At the end of November, if you can get it into SAGE by the 29th of January, we will be able to look at that most recent operating period. Does that make sense? I'm pausing for a second. Okay. And then if you're in RED and you see spending says 0, we're not going to panic. Not a bad thing. It just means that we're going to add the information and before those are finalized. So nothing bad's happening. We just need time to put those data in. I'm going to stop for a second because we often have spending questions and concerns. No one's concerned. Awesome. Okay. So another thing we look at is occupancy. So we need 90% to be occupied, and we look at quarterly utilization. For YHDP, crisis transitional housing, and youth PSH, it is that you can have up to 1 empty bed per quarter. And then also, if you are a new project, you are exempt from this particular measure for your first year. Yeah. Okay. Housing stability. When we talk about housing stability, we're looking at who's still in housing or who has moved to permanent housing. So the benchmarks here are for permanent supportive housing, that 95% of folks remain in PSH or exit to permanent housing, rapid rehousing and TH, that 95% of the folks leaving a project go to permanent housing. For youth, YHDP rapid rehousing and diversion, rapid exit, that we have 85% exit to permanent housing. YHDP crisis transitional housing, 60% are exiting to permanent housing. And then for youth rapid rehousing, diversion, rapid exit, crisis transitional housing, less than 5% of folks leaving are exiting to shelter, unsheltered, or unknown. Yeah? No hands, no questions. And then we're going to let you know what is excluded here. So we just talked about remaining or exiting to permanent housing. So we do some exclusion. So if someone passes away in the program, if there's a deceased participant, that is excluded from the scored set. Programs that only have one negative exit, that also is excluded. If folks were leaving housing,
Pause on that for a second.
sure.
Because this confuses people a little bit. If you have, excluding deceased, if you have the deceased is removed from the set, but if you have one negative exit with no other exits, then we take that negative exit and waiver it, right? So you get the full points, or in a certain situation you don't get scored because it's only about exits. But yes, if you have two exits and one is positive and one is negative, we don't remove that negative exit in that situation. So just want to be clear on that. So this only applies if you only have one exit and it ends up being negative, we'll remove it. The exception is if you have something like deceased that's removed from the set, then it's then it narrows down to that number. Yeah.
Great. We are also excluding exits from housing if folks are seeking safety. So we'll see this sometimes with domestic violence, that someone may need to leave housing and go to emergency shelter, for example. So that would be excluded. And then if folks are leaving to foster care, group home, hospital, long-term care, nursing home, and substance abuse treatment, those are also excluded. And I see Sonia's hand is up.
Just one more thing before you go to the APR. Well, HMIS doesn't know, or the APR either way. Housing to seek safety. That you'll have to put a support ticket saying, client, and you don't give information to say client A was exiting to seek safety, and then I won't have to modify the report accordingly.
Yeah, thanks, Miles. That's important.
You can also do that during the change request process, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question. What about clients who exit to incarceration?
That is considered a negative exit.
So it's not excluded from the score.
It is not.
That
Okay,
was
tricky
Elaine's
one, because
question.
we have no control of their activities on that level. So
No, I hear you. I hear you on that. Anything else?
I just want to mention on that, most other than the seek is based on the SPMs, and we're using what HUD is looking for on the SPM report.
Yep. Thanks, Miles. Non-cash benefits. So the standard here is that participants with non-cash benefits, excluding health insurance, are 95%, and for domestic violence, 76%. And this is not scored for YHDP. Miles, will you give some examples of non-cash benefits?
Yes. We have supplemental nutritional assistance program, SNAP. We also have special, we have the WIC program. We have TANF child care services. We have the TANF transportation services. We have the other TANF funded services. And then I really don't remember what the other source is because that gets a little vague here. So
I just thought it'd be good to get some examples in.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're better at it than I am. So there we go.
Yolanda has
go ahead, Yolanda. Sure.
Yeah, I just have a quick question about the non-cash benefits as well as the cash benefits. So if we're a program and we serve immigrants who are not eligible for any assistance, are they excluded from the count?
at the moment, no.
No, and they're not excluded either in what HUD evaluates. So again, we're aligning what we do with what we are required to do by HUD.
Yeah, because I feel like that's where we lose the most points at is because we serve that population and we have a lot of people who do not qualify for any of those benefits.
The thing that, and I know that this is may or may not alleviate some of that concern, but that everyone has that same issue, right? And that ultimately this is all kind of a bell curve situation, right? Because all of this information leads up to how your project gets ranked. And so everyone, and also that's part of why none of these measures are set at 100%. That, you know, there's an acknowledgement that these things are not going to be possible for everyone that you work with. And I think one of the changes that was recommended by the work group that we will be working with our partners at Nutmeg to move forward, as I talked about earlier, is lowering some of the benchmarks to give more of a cushion for those kinds of circumstances where there really are things that are entirely out of your control.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so we're also looking at length of stay in programs. So for domestic violence transitional housing, length of stay is 2 years or less. For youth transitional housing, length of stay is 1 year or less. And those are the COC non-DVs. And YHDP crisis transitional housing, that length of stay is 60 days or less. Earned income, we're also looking at this, and it's scored for all youth projects except the YHDP diversion rapid exit. So we're looking at 25% increased earned income from entry to exit or follow-up. And for all projects except it is 40% for transitional housing. And this is when we were talking about annual assessments. This is an example, right, of why it's really important that this is done. Because you want to make sure you're getting credit for any increased earned income. And if you don't do it at the annual assessment or follow-up or exit, we just won't know and you won't get credit for it. So another reason to make sure the annual assessments are done. So we also look, as you guys know, at consumer surveys. So just move this over. So just to confuse you and us, no, we have 2 deadlines, which we don't usually like to do, but that's how we had to do it this year. The DEMIS surveys are due to DEMIS, by the end of this year. And if you're using a BOS survey, they are due to us by January 15th. Maximum points available is a 35% response rate. We love consumer surveys and go ahead and do them, but if you have 35% or 55%, it's the same thing. You're going to get the maximum number of points. And so if you have 100 folks in your project and you get 40 surveys returned, your response rate is 40%. Just so you know what that looks like. Projects that don't submit surveys get 0 points for a response rate, which is sad. And we don't like to do that. So get surveys in. We also don't like to do penalties, so please get your surveys in on time. There's a 5-point penalty if they're late or not received. The links are in RED emails and on the RED renewal process page under resources. So hopefully those are not hard to find. And just a note here, so for BOS surveys that are entered in SurveyMonkey, the score won't refresh unless you update your data in RED that we were talking about. So you're going to hear us talk a lot about asking you to refresh your data because we want to know the most current data that are in HMIS and the other sources that are coming that we're pulling from. So please refresh because that's the only way we can see all the good work that you're doing. And then for DEMA surveys and for BOS surveys, if they're sent to Housing Innovations for data entry, the score won't refresh until we finish our data entry process, which is sometime in February. So another place to not panic if you don't see a score for that yet.
So I just want to clarify because I realized this is a little confusing on this slide. For DEMA surveys, right, you should not be sending them to us for data entry. What that's meant to, that means is that for DEMA surveys, right, until we get the data from DEMIS and that data get uploaded, you're not going to see the results in RED. For BOS surveys, you may send those to us for data entry if you don't have data entry capacity on your team, and there we will enter the data. But DEMA surveys is going to be an automated process, which I think
Yes.
is the
We are
next
going to
slide.
talk about. Thanks for that
Okay.
clarification.
Sure. Yeah.
Because we don't want the DEMA surveys. We don't want the DEMA surveys.
So,
Work for
I'm
you, and then
sorry.
work for us to tell you that we don't want them. Well, we are going to talk about it in a second, but thank you, Lauren. Yes. So it's really just to say you're going to keep refreshing. You'll see the data when DEMAS has done their job and we've done our job, and it will be in there.
Could I ask a question? I don't know
Of
if you
course.
can.
Here.
Sorry. So we do the DEMA surveys by the end of this month. And once they're done, are we to forward them to somebody, or are we to assume that we put them in the DEMA system?
Hey,
And
Liz, go to the next slide. I think this might be covered. I'm sorry, I don't mean
Yeah.
to cut you off.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Gary. I was saying Eric, but and I was like, that's not Eric's voice, that's Gary. Hey, Gary. Yes, so good question, right? Do just your normal DEMAS survey process, and then our friends at DEMAS are going to make magic happen, and we're going to have those results. So we don't want them to, please don't send them to us. Just
Okay.
go through your DEMAS process. And again, that deadline is December 31st. Yes.
So
And we expect.
we don't put them on Sengen either.
No, correct.
All right.
Yeah.
Nope.
Correct.
Nope.
So as
To
long as
get
we
them
get
to
them
us.
into the DEMA system, we should be good.
You
Yeah.
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
Yep.
but keep them in your records just in case something odd happens, like and I might have to request it, but hopefully that won't happen. But that'd be the worst case scenario.
Okay, so if let's say half of the program would be DEMAS considered clients and we put them in the DEMAS system, what happens to the families surveys in our program? Do we send them to Miles, or because they wouldn't necessarily be going in the DEMAS system?
Yeah, then you just do you send them in the Zengen, and I will pull them out and give it to our various data entry people, and they eventually will enter them.
Okay, so just for clarification, would it be just the family heads of household surveys that I would send to you, Miles?
Yeah, the your participants that actually are being served, yes.
Well,
yeah.
all of them, the individuals will end up going into the DEMA system.
Yeah, no, yeah, we don't want duplicates. So whatever you're doing,
Okay,
if your client is giving it to doing it in DEMAS, that's it. That's all we want from them. And
okay,
then the clients that are doing the BOS surveys, yeah, I will take those. Yeah, so
well,
I
would
just
it be, let me click again, let me get clarification.
yeah.
So let's say we do DEMA surveys on all the participants. We're going to have individuals and families. The individuals are going to go into the DEMA system, but the family DEMA surveys would be sent to you, Miles, for entry.
Oh,
Let me just jump in here, Miles. So, so Gary, I just want to understand the situation. I think what you're saying is that in your program, right, there are singles and families, and that the singles are the only ones that you're getting DEMAS funding to serve. Is that correct?
Yeah, but we have a capacity, we're over that capacity, but we put those surveys into the DEMA system.
Okay.
In the past, we've sent all of the participants to Miles, including families.
The reason you're not putting the family surveys into the DEMAS system is because you're not getting DEMAS funding to serve those families. Is that
Right,
correct?
and they wouldn't be recognized as DEMAS
So
clients.
I think it's fine. This is a very unique situation. So
Okay.
I think it's fine. Like normally, if you're not getting DEMAS funding, you would use the CT BOS survey, but it's
Okay.
fine if you've already surveyed those folks and you've used the DEMAS survey. You can submit them in Zengen.
Okay.
And we will just make sure there's a note in there why you're doing it, and we will figure it out. And if
All right.
anything
All
gets
right.
messed up,
So
submit a separate
basically,
request and we'll figure it out.
just as I said, I'm going to put the DEMA surveys into the DEMA system.
Yep.
For families, I will put the family surveys into Zengen.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
That's a very unique circumstance. In 90% of cases, no one should be submitting DEMA surveys in Zengen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Except for me.
Unless you have a situation like that.
All
Yeah.
right.
All right. I think we have Eric.
And just to let you know, because now we have this will get a little depending on the situation, I might, let's say I got your manual surveys before, and then I entered in its engine score, the information might be out of date because I don't have the other information from Demas yet, or the timing, so if you see the scores like half or whatever, you see it's equaling one set or the other set, just know that the two sets are not in yet. So
we're going to talk about this, I think, in a later slide, the timing.
Yeah, I mean, I was just an unusual circumstance.
Let's let Eric, I'm looking at the clock. We're going to keep it moving. Eric, what's your question?
Hi, thanks. So these the difference between BOS and Demas surveys have always been very confusing to me. So we administer, we don't do the support services piece in our program. Demas hires out to have that done. So I don't know who in our program has done Demas surveys or not. So I've always been hesitant to do it that way, but I'd like to, I don't know. I mean, if it's a way to do it to make it easier, how do I find out if folks in our program have actually completed a Demas survey?
Let's take that question offline, Eric, because I don't easily know the answer. So I think Shannon is our liaison on the Demas surveys. So Shannon, can you reach out to Eric and see if there's a way that, thank you. I'm wondering if we need to hold questions to the end so that we can get to the demo, Liz, or how do you think we're doing?
Yeah. How about can we just do Amanda's question? Do we just have one last quick on surveys, maybe?
Thanks. I was just wondering what the timeline is for the surveys that Demas is sending you, because they obviously go by fiscal year normally.
Yeah.
And this is a different time frame.
Yes, it is. So the timeline we've asked Demas for their surveys is anything completed within the 2024 calendar year, January 1 to December 31st. And we expect to get data on those surveys from Demas in the second half and the end of January.
And so if we're an entity that doesn't normally submit surveys to Demas the normal way, right? We do not do SurveyMonkey and we do not do stuff through DDAP. I usually send them an export. I would have to make the decision either to enter the data into one of those systems or send it to you separately, correct?
Yeah, you would have to enter the data into one of those systems by the end of this calendar year.
Okay. Yeah, I'll probably email back and forth with Miles. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And then just one, I'm going to keep us moving just quickly. If you are a Demas provider, we're going to assume we're going to get we will get Demas surveys from Demas. If you don't want us to use those and you are using the BOS surveys, that's totally fine. Just please let us know. So just that quick, and I'm going to keep moving. For YHDP projects, you're going to use the same process, and we're just noting this because in the past there was a different process. YHDP, we're all one big happy family now. You're going to do it just like everybody else. Quickly, we really hate penalties. So just 5 points are deducted if your consumer surveys are late, and 2 points are deducted for not updating Zengen contacts. So please do those things because we don't like to give penalties. Really quickly, the process and the schedule. We keep talking about Zengen. Please, please, please make sure you're doing what you need to do in Zengen. If your primary contact has changed, you're going to reach out to Shannon. If you need more information, click on that Zengen training link or reach out to us and we're happy to go, especially the people who are brand new and are like, what's Zengen? What are you guys talking about? Reach out to us. We're really happy to help. Really quickly, folks were able to get the consumer surveys last spring. Today is the 11th, and we're having our webinar, and RED is going to open, and I'm going to talk really fast so that Adam can tell you the good stuff about RED. We just talked about Demas surveys, and don't wait. Begin completing your grant assessments right now in RED and reviewing your data. BOS surveys are due January 15th. January 15th is also the last day to complete your grant assessment, review, and refresh the data. And it's your last day to submit RED support requests. And you could use that little link there. And February 19th is the deadline to make data changes and refresh your data in RED. To be determined are all of these things, which we'll tell you all about as it when we get the deadline set. But the takeaway here is there's a lot to do in RED, and you're going to ask for change requests there. You're going to do a corrective action plan in there. So that's the takeaway. And so this is important because we want to make sure you know what to do. We all love to reach out to Miles because he's the most helpful person on the planet and he's so lovely and patient. And you will eventually get to Miles, but it's better to use a support request in RED, like Lauren said, so that we can just keep track of everything. It's just a better record keeper for us than if you do one-off emails to Miles. We will absolutely be in touch with you and help out, but please use this system. And it lets us know if Housing Innovations needs to do it or Nutmeg needs to do it. And if you are just struggling with HMIS data cleanup, use this link and it will bring you to a helpful page on what to do and how to get help. If you are a DV project, you're going to reach out to Joanne and she will help you on comparable database issues. And if you click on this link, it will tell you if you're not sure if you're being evaluated, check it out. So if you're not on the list, your project is not being evaluated. I know we're doing some outreach on HMIS IDs because we're missing some for projects. So if we're asking for it, please send that our way. And if your project has multiple HMIS IDs, please make sure that everything is correctly listed. If you haven't had a chance to look at this list, please do that because we need to make sure
And
that's done.
for those that already sent information about the list, like the project name, an agency name, or you're not being scored this year because you actually didn't open versus the application said you're going to be open, that's been already entered into Zengin/RED. So that's already been done. So you'll see that there. But the document itself has not been updated. So if you already sent the ticket in, that's already been taken care of.
Great. I'm going to just really quickly, we'll keep sending emails out and let folks know, but you do have the ability, like you always have in the past, to put in a change request. And again, that's going to happen through RED. Same with the grievance process. So reports will be finalized. You get to look at it and say, oh, this doesn't make any sense. I'm going to put in a change request to ask and say that score doesn't look right. We'll look at it. It'll either be granted. If it's not granted and you don't withdraw it, it will go to a grievance committee. We'll just keep notifying you along the way. And just things to remember so that you know what you can and can't grieve. So you can't grieve and say, I just don't like that standard. You may feel that way, and we totally get it. We want to hear what you have to say, but the time to do that is when we talk about the renewal evaluation criteria. So not now. We miss deadlines. We just can't. Everybody, just to be fair and equitable, everybody has to submit things at the same time. Circumstances that really are universally experienced, like it is a tough housing market, staff turnover, things like that. And then what's new is that grievances from projects indicating that they can't meet certain performance standards because they didn't have enough people, the CAN wasn't sending them folks, or there just weren't enough people for their project. That won't be accepted either. And just really quickly, like something that has happened in the past, someone had a flood or a fire and they had to take units offline. Things like that are what we see. And if a grievance that have gone to the grievance committee that sort of makes sense or are part of something that's allowed to be grieved.
I just really quickly want to say, because I think this question came up before and we didn't answer it, is so this is going to happen probably, assuming everything goes according to plan, in February. So when you get the email from us in February that says, the scores are everything's done, to take a look, go back in, right? That's when you'll know for sure that like all your spending information has been entered, right? All of the consumer survey information is entered. That the data that we're getting from DEMIS may not be fully reflected in your reports until you get the email from us that says everything's done. Go back in.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Lauren.
Yeah,
Great.
and you will also see that time when you get the email, I would reran all the reports. So you'll see the latest data from there. Yeah.
Let's turn it over to Adam.
Yeah. All right, Adam.
All right, well, this should be pretty easy because you had a lot of screenshots in here of the application that you covered before. So mostly this will be rehashing stuff you already covered pretty well. I will share my screen over here. If I can find the right window. All right, so apparently most of you are already pretty familiar with the process, but some of you are new, so I'll try and step through it. And by all means, let me know if you have a question. And hopefully somebody will notify me if there is a question, since I won't be able to necessarily see that when I'm looking at this part of the screen.
Will do.
So obviously, first thing you have to do when you get to the site, and you'll be given the link if you don't already have it, would be to log in to see your data. And I already got the right one. So for users who have used this before, you should be able to log in the same way you have been all along. There is a forgot password link down here if you forgot your password. And for those of you who have not used this before, the email that you'll use to log in, and this is highlighted up here, would be the email address that you entered in Zengen for your contacts. And if you haven't used this before, you won't have a password yet. So it does not know what your Zengen password is to automatically do that. You will need to do a password reset for that email, and then you follow the link in the email to set an initial password. Any questions on that so far? I will take the silence as a no. All right. So once you have logged in, you'll see a link here to go to your grant projects, and there's a banner at the top reminding you of the deadline for submitting the data in case you forget it. So a constant reminder there. So when you get to your projects, you'll see on the top here you have some of your deadline dates, which I believe are at least mostly, if not all, up to date at the moment. One of these, I think those are correct. So that will have the deadlines. It will be an indication of what the data reporting period is in HMIS that is being used for evaluation. And you'll see a list of your projects, most of which will be awaiting submission. And if you had a project scored in a previous year, you'll also see that what the previous year's scores were as well. So for any project that's awaiting for submission, you'll have to go in and click the button. As was noted earlier, the first thing you need to do is complete the grant assessment review if that has not been done yet. That is the thing where you will indicate your program's operating year, which is shown here. If that is correct, say it is correct. If it is not correct, indicate that it is not correct. And that way it will notify us that needs to be corrected. And also that will give you a list of the HMIS projects associated with your grant. I'm using a test project at the moment that's not associated with anything meaningful, but you should see all of your HMIS projects there. If it looks correct, indicate that it is accurate. If anything is wrong, same thing, indicate that it's not so that we can get that corrected. And then you hit the button for submitting the grant for review. For all of you who are HMIS users, this is all you have to do to get your grant data. As indicated before, for those who are DV projects or do not have HMIS data, you will need to import, and this is actually mislabeled, I just noticed this. It is the APR file that is being uploaded, not the HUD CSV export. I will make a correction there. I'm going to pick one here, hit the button to submit for grant review. And that process will then go to HMIS, get your latest data. It will go to SurveyMonkey, get the survey data. gather up spending information from Zengen, all that kind of stuff, and generate an initial score for you. It'll give you a summary at the top, how many points were available, how many you earned, if there's any penalties on there, and then what the final score is. And then below that, you see the performance for each criteria, telling you what the criteria is, what the benchmark standard is that were just reviewed in the earlier slides. There is up here a link to the PDF file that has all the more specific details about each criteria, what the different levels of benchmarks are, how many points there are, what the exemptions and exceptions are, etc. So that link is right there. It'll indicate the performance that you were scored at, how many points were available, and how many you were awarded, and then any issues down there with any lateness penalties and such. Any questions so far? All right, so if you see on your data here that you did not do particularly well on a score, and you realize that that is because of some data in HMIS that had not been entered yet or was inaccurate, etc., and you correct that data, there is the button up here, which was also mentioned earlier, to update the score based on current HMIS data. This button will refresh all the information used for scoring. It'll refresh the spending data, any SurveyMonkey data, as well as HMIS data, and then rescore the project using that. So you can do that as many times as you need to while correcting your data to get the score up as high as you possibly can.
Yeah, and for DV projects, there'll actually be an import right above that button. For whatever reason on the test project, it's not showing it, but and then you'll be importing the APR if you had to, if you changed your data in your ETL, you'll have to import it again.
Right. Yep. Thank you,
New
Miles.
version.
It was yeah, like on the previous screen, there'll be the little browse button to upload the file if it was a DB or non-HMIS program.
So Adam, the only thing you really need us to do by the 15th, I think you mentioned, of what would be to submit grant for review, although we recognize the data won't be accurate. You know, we wouldn't even have the surveys, you know, information at that point.
I believe that is correct, and if that is not correct, Lauren, let me know. That the initial scores have to be in by the 15th, but there will be time to make corrections to the scores after that point, up until that information will be on here on the process overview tab on the top. Has the timeline, so there will be the deadline for making data changes in there. So you have to have it in by the 15th, and then there will still be about another month to make further changes and corrections.
Yeah, so that's right, Adam. So by the 15th, right, you want to complete the grant assessment review. You want to push that update, refresh your data button to make sure that everything is current. If you want to look at your data, right, to make sure, with the exceptions of the things that we talked about, the surveys and the spending, for just a handful of programs with late APR deadlines, your spending might not be up to date. You want to make sure everything looks right to you, because anything that's coming out of HMIS at that point is going to be correct based upon what you've put into HMIS. And you want to submit a support ticket if something looks wrong to you. Okay,
All by January 15th.
By January 15th.
Okay.
Yeah. And then by the 19th, right, that's your window to be able to make all the data changes in HMIS. So, right, you did the initial review, you see that you have missing assessments, right? Now your team's going to go in, make those data corrections in HMIS, and push refresh data again in RED by the 19th of February. So you've got a whole month to make the data corrections, right? But you want to if you need help, right? That's why we're asking you to do the support tickets early, because that gives us and the Nutmeg team enough time to help you before everything's going to be final by February 19th.
Okay, great.
Okay. On the surveys, if you did enter survey, let's say, for example, you had surveys entered in SurveyMonkey and you are seeing 0, that you could put a ticket early, because that might be a linkage issue with SurveyMonkey to RED. Because that should show a result. And that's already been tested. I see results on some programs that I saw myself. But just in case, that's the exception to the surveys.
Right, thank you, Miles. There is also, oh, go ahead, continue.
I just noticed something else. The spending, that's the amount that's actually expended for the year. So you did 225,000. That's your amount you expended.
Right. There is, in addition to the performance data, there is also some HMIS program details, which would give you a little bit more insight into the counts that came out of the program. Now on here, many of these may not be accurate because it's just a test program that we're using for demonstration purposes. But for programs that are coming from HMIS and from programs, non-HMIS ones and DV ones that upload by the file, there will be a bunch of information in here which may help you track down how you got a particular score. So it has total grant amount and amount unspent information, information number of participants, stayers, leavers, who was due an assessment, who wasn't due one, who's missing one, who has an incomplete one. And then there is information about the rate of return to homelessness information that will help you track down some of the numbers behind the scores to help you understand them. And if any of them are not what you expect them to be, then that would be where you could put in a ticket and we'll help you figure out why that is. Any questions on that so far? Oh, all right then.
Don't see any.
So at a later point in this process, once the final scores have been submitted, if you disagree with one of the scores and wish to put in a change request, as was described described earlier, there will be the button up here where you can put in a change request and explain why you believe that your score should be changed. Can enter that information on here, submit the change request, and then Housing Innovations will either approve or reject them, and you'll be able to see that information in red also. From the main page, you'll be able to see a number in there indicating how many change requests they are. As well as on your projects page, there is a column that will show how many items you had filed a change request for. And if you had received any points adjustments or scoring change because of that, that will be listed in this column also. And then any questions on that so far?
I just want to say that at each of these steps in the process, you will get email from our team saying, okay, the scores are final now. It's time to go in and do your change requests. Or if you submitted a change request, okay, we've reviewed all the change requests. The results are visible now in RED. So you don't have to keep just going in and checking RED. You'll know when it's time to take the next step because you'll get an email from us.
Thank you. That is a good point. The next stage beyond that would be the corrective action plans. And that would be if it has been determined that some of your, I believe the corrective action items are items for which you scored 0 points. And that is after any change requests had been taken into account or not approved. Housing Innovations.
It'll be projects that scored only below a certain threshold. So, whatever, let's say it's 70 this year, right? So if your project scored below 70, for any items that you got a 0 on, you have to submit a cap. And all of these instructions will go out in detail later in the process.
But the threshold is yet to be determined, right?
Correct. Yep.
Correct.
Yeah, typically, it's the bottom 10%.
The bottom 10% is usually what the steering committee, all this stuff is authorized by the steering committee.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks for the extra insight. If a corrective action plan was generated for your project, as Lauren mentioned, you'll be notified by Housing Innovations, but you'll also see that indication on here. So I had created one on here just to show that button shows up. You would be required then this will give you a list of all criteria for which a corrective action plan is created. And you will have to enter up to 3 proposed actions for how you intend to address that, what the target date that you expect that to be completed by, and who's responsible for it. And then when you have entered that information, you submit that for approval to Housing Innovations. They will review that, and they will either approve or reject it. And you'll be able to come back here and see either that it was approved or that it was rejected, and any comments that they have on it. If it was rejected, you'll need to make modifications to it and submit that to be approved again. And when that process is completed, you'll also see on your projects list, instead of showing up in red as needing further attention, that will change to indicate that they have been approved. If they'll turn green. I see a hand up.
Jay?
Or there was a hand up.
Hi, what would be the appropriate response, for example, for like the non-cash benefit if we had a client who's not undocumented? What would be the correct response to put in there if they're the reason why like the score is low?
You can just say that. Just say that, we had, of our 5 participants, 2 of them are undocumented and, were ineligible for benefits.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
That was a good question. I had not had that one before.
Yeah, and the cap number is how many sections of the criteria that you have to answer. So it says 5, so you have 5 sections. Yeah, that was a very poor test project.
Yes, it was. Yeah. So that, like Miles said, if there's only one criteria that you have a corrective action plan for, that'll show 1. So that is what that number means. Any other questions at the moment?
I don't see any, Adam.
Oh, you should explain the cap status.
The cap status will indicate, thank you, that's a good point. Once you have submitted your proposed action steps, this will show that they are waiting for approval from Housing Innovations, and then that would indicate either approved or rejected, depending on whether Housing Innovations accepted them or rejected them, and that will tell you if you need to go back in and make any changes. Once they are approved, you'll be able to go in and see them, but you won't be able to make any further changes to them. If you have multiple action plan items and they approve one of them but not another, you won't be able to make any further changes to the approved one, but you'll be able to make changes to the one that was not approved, and then go back and forth as necessary until everything is approved, and then it becomes locked where you can see what they are but not make any further changes to them. Okay, any other questions?
I don't see any.
All right, then I will move on to the support page, which I believe may be the last item on here. So there will be an updated link for this year's webinar on the support page. It has the BOS renewal evaluation website link. There'll be, I believe, the link to this year's slides, and the how-to guide on here. A couple of common questions that you can click on for more information about data quality issues and other common items. And then if that doesn't answer your question and you need additional support, you can come down here. It's got information on the renewal evaluation data cleanup help desk that you can use for most of your data errors. If it is not a data error, then you can indicate what kind of issue you're having, question about the score, login, etc., something else. So select what it's about. This will generally include a list of grant projects that are assigned to you. So if the issue is related to a particular grant project, you would select it from this list, and then you enter your message on there. The email information is based on your login, which should be which is the email that you use to log into here, and the email for Extension. So that's pre-filled in. And if you have a phone number, if you wish to be contacted, you can enter that. Hit the submit button, and your request will go to the the correct person depending on which topic you chose. So if it's like a tech support issue, it will come to the Nutmeg Help Desk. If it's something else, may go to Housing Innovations, but it'll go to the right place if you pick the right category, generally speaking.
I just wanted to do a quick pitch for the how-to guide, Adam. Can you go back up?
I sure can.
So that is like, Nutmeg has spent a lot of time here, right? Really documenting everything you need to know about the system and how to do things. So if you're stuck, this is a great resource, right? It really walks you through step by step how to use the system. So I wanted to both thank Nutmeg for all of this hard work that they've done and also encourage people to know that it's here and use it. It's a good resource.
That is good. Yeah, actually, there's a lot of new stuff on here I haven't seen yet. So apparently, Tashika and some of this has been very hard at work. Yeah, so hopefully that will be a helpful resource also. And if not, then there will always be somebody to help you individually if necessary. Any other questions so far?
Not seeing any.
Well, I guess that is about it. It's fairly simple. All the hard work happens behind the magic curtain, so you don't really get to see that. So it should be fairly simple on from your perspective. And if you do have any further questions or issues that come up, then let us know and we'll help you out with that.
Thanks, Adam.
Right, I'll stop the share so you can go back to the final slides there.
That's great. Thank you. Any questions on anything we've talked about this morning? Kim?
Hi, yeah, I'm sorry. Another question on the DMIS surveys.
No, all good.
Just to clarify, I did put a bunch of DMIS surveys in DDAP earlier this year. So those are all set then. Just the BOS surveys. Perfect. Thank you. Just wanted to be sure.
Great. No, never apologize. We're happy to answer questions. Anyone else?
Just want to say thank you.
Oh, well, thank you guys. We appreciate you coming and listening to us and learning about this stuff. And we just want to do a plug for the BOS renewal evaluation page. It's got instructions and the criteria, the project lists. Check it out. It has lots of stuff. And if you can't find something, reach out and ask us. Another plug for the Zengen training. So I know we had some brand new people. We really try to have as many resources as possible. So check that out if you need a little help on Zengen. And then these are our emails and contact information. Please feel free to reach out. And on that note, we are going to stay here if folks have questions. So if you want to ask a question that's specific to your project or you want a link or a login, we're going to be here. We're going to stay for a little bit and answer questions. So please feel free to stay if you'd like to stay. But
the meeting is being recorded. Sorry to interrupt, but the meeting is being recorded and it will be posted to the website within the next 24 hours.
Oh yeah, actually, and even this afternoon, I think even this afternoon, we're going to get it out to you guys because we'll let the folks who couldn't join know that RED is open and good to go because we want everybody to jump in. And then the slides are actually already on the website, and we will get the recording on this afternoon. And thank you guys so much for joining us. We love having a nice big crowd of folks, and you ask great questions, and we appreciate all of your help and assistance with this. And we're all just here to help too. We want the process to be seamless for you and smooth. So please reach out to us. And then we'll stop the recording and just stay on for technical assistance for anybody who has some questions. So thank you all.
Thank you.
There was a question earlier that we.
Hang on, because I don't think we've stopped the recording yet. Did you?
No.
Are you working on that?